to the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Hello there from San Francisco. How are you all? Are you having a good week? Is it nice and sunny where you are as it is here? I've just been at the Blockstream office, just recorded a very cool interview. Can't wait to get that one out. Anyway, welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast, which is brought to you by Kraken, the best exchange in the world. And today I've got a Kraken interview. Finally, I've got the interview I've been trying to record with Nick Percoco, their Chief Security Officer, talking about hacking and exchange security. But first, I got a message from my badass sponsors. So first up, it is Kraken. They're not only the sponsor, they're not only the guest, they're pretty much everything today, but that's cool because they are an amazing company. And they are the only place I use to buy and sell Bitcoin. And hopefully, with this interview, you're going to find out exactly why I love and use Kraken. You're going to hear from Nick about how security is embedded in the DNA of the company, all the things Nick thinks about, and how they've created a culture of security at Kraken. Exchange security is so important. There have been hacks all through the history of exchanges, all through the history of Bitcoin. People always getting their Bitcoin stolen. It's important if you're going to use an exchange, you're going to want to use the ones who care about security the most. And for me, that is Kraken. That's why I'm so proud that they're my sponsors. And also, you're going to find out about Kraken Security Labs, where they look to improve security across the whole industry. So if you want to trade with the best exchange in the world, the one that cares most about security, head over to kraken.com, which is kraken.com. And today's show is also brought to you by the mighty BlockFi, the future of Bitcoin and financial services. Actually, I say that every week, the future of Bitcoin and financial services, but it's kind of now because I'm using them right now with their interest accounts. I'm about to close down on my fourth payment, and do you know what? It's not a trivial amount. So have you checked it out yet? Have you worked with BlockFi? Have you used any of their products or services? They've got two main things you can be using. I know some of you are because I get some of your emails and DMs, but right now they do have crypto-backed loans where you can take out a loan against your Bitcoin, Ether, or Litecoin, and they also have the interest accounts, which I'm using, where you can earn interest on Bitcoin, Ether, or GUSD. And through their partnership with Casa, BlockFi clients are eligible for discounts off Casa products. So you're definitely going to want to check that out as well. So if you are interested in trying this out, make sure you do your own research and then head over to blockfi.com, which is BLOCKFI.com. Okay, so onto the interview, and this is one of the ones I had to do in person. So I've been in Chicago a couple of times recently. We haven't been able to make schedules work, but on this trip, we managed to find a day. It was an early start. I had to fly in from New York in the morning. We got there and we did the interview, and then I had to fly straight out to LA. But we did it in person, which I'm really glad we did, because it was by only spending time with Nick and kind of getting for a feel for him in person that I really understood how much he really cares about security and why this job is like the ultimate job for him. He talks about his whole career leading up to this point, and it kind of makes sense. So his job as Chief Security Officer at Kraken means he is responsible for the exchange. His job is to keep hackers at bay and keep all funds safe, and that's a pretty daunting task, I think. I mean, I don't know how I would deal with it. I'd be a nervous wreck. I think I mentioned that during the interview, because exchange hacks happen all the time. There is that honeypot, which only a tiny vulnerability can lead to the loss of tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and the idea of being the last man in charge of that, for me, that's kind of terrifying. But Nick was chilled, man. He just totally handled it. So how did Nick and Kraken stay ahead of the hackers, and what has made Kraken the safest exchange in the world? And how does Nick manage to stay so calm with all this? And we don't just talk about that. We don't just talk about the exchange and the hacking security exchanges. We actually have a broad conversation about hacking and the industry, because Nick has like a long history in it and he's got so much information to share. So listen, this one was fascinating for me. I think you'll love it. You know, as ever, if you've got any feedback, it's hello@whatbitcoindid.com. And just a quick note, as I said, I'm in San Francisco now, here for a couple more days, and then going to be heading to New York on Wednesday, and then back to the UK, and then I'm going to be taking 3 weeks holiday with the kids. They deserve it. They've been very patient with all my traveling, but I've got loads of shows in advance ready, so you won't have a week without them. And I'm also going to be launching Defiance at the end of August, so keep an eye out for that. Anyway, on to the interview. If you've got any questions, then give me a shout. You know my email by now, but it's hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Glad we're finally doing this. I've been really looking forward to this interview more than most. I've been talking about it on the show relentlessly, saying we're going to do it, and then we couldn't, but now we're here.
Yeah, it finally worked out. The schedule worked out great.
Yeah, it's perfect. And actually, I'm glad I did the early flight now, because I'm not staying. I'm going to go straight to LA from here, and I'm going to have 9 days in LA, nice and chilled.
Did you just come over from the UK?
Not this morning. I came over 2 days ago.
Okay.
I was in New York for 2 days, and then I flew in from JFK at 7:30 this morning.
Okay. So you're just going to head back out to O'Hare and jump over to LA?
Straight up to LA, have a little sleep, and then get there, and I'm going to have a day on the beach tomorrow.
That's nice.
Yeah, so it's, But I've become quite fond of Chicago. Are you from here originally, or?
Yeah, I grew up here.
It's a really great city.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome when it's like this weather. I think, 75 and sunny. It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
In January when it's negative 22 Fahrenheit, it's a little different.
Yeah, so the first time I came, it was raining, but it was still a great trip. Actually, I was with Alex Gladstein on that trip. Me and him went to the hockey, went to see the Blackhawks.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fun.
We got a great game. We got a 4-4 tie game with overtime and penalties.
Oh.
So that was a good one. But
Yeah.
I'm growing fond of Chicago. So anyway, great to finally meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, so your 20-year career was a dress rehearsal for your role at Kraken.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, tell me about it.
Sure. I've been in the security space, I would say the security industry, for over 20 years. Even before that, I guess I would say professionally for over 20 years. I've been into computers and technology from when I was a very young age. 6 years old, got my first computer in the early 80s, taught myself to code, got into the BBS world, bulletin board systems, dial-up, precursor to, internet and chat rooms and things like that. Got a little bit into the hacker scene from that. Would read lots of hacker zines from the BBSs, would learn, just absorbed as much as I could. In college, I majored in computer science and also ran the IRC server. So lots of folks may be familiar with IRC. Ran the IRC server there. It was an FNet or EFNet IRC server. Wrote a ton of bots that would protect channels and bots that would cause problems as well. Sort of wore two hats, right? Being an opper. It was a lot of fun. And then right out of school, took a job in IT and IT security right out of school. I didn't know that you can do like ethical hacking and that type of thing. Right when I out of school, I was doing more security architecture work. It was at Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture. So basically, just got recruited right out of college, joined them. It sort of took a lot of the rough edges that I had as being a little bit more of a hacker, and sort of gave me some professional etiquette. But it was great. It was a great experience, and from there, jumped to a company that was doing ethical hacking work, penetration testing. Would get hired by banks in Chicago. We'd get hired by trading floors. I did a lot of work for like the Chicago Board of Trade and places like that, testing their security back in the late 90s.
And so what your job is, just to try and hack it and try and
Yeah,
break in?
that was my job. Yeah, so I was individual contributor back then in the 90s. They would ship me all over the country, all over the world, and they would say, here you go, here's your target. Try to hack into it. Physically even, try to social engineer, try to circumvent physical controls, get into the data center. I broke into hospitals, broke into banks, broke into all sorts of places, and would write up a report, tell them how we did it. They would hopefully fix it, and then I would move on to the next gig. And it was,
how old are you at that time?
it was late 90s, so 23, 24.
That must have been pretty cool. 23, 24, flying around the world. You're almost like feels like a spy, like a Bond thing.
Yeah, you had a get out of jail free card, right? You always had a letter in your pocket that would be from like the CEO of the company, because if you did get caught, and people surrounded you and they tried to call the police, you'd say, well, here's the letter from the CEO, here's their cell phone number, give them a call, and they can verify that I'm really doing this job.
And that happened?
Occasionally.
Is it still scary at the time?
Yeah, because you don't know what's going to happen, right? And so later on, that was when I was just doing that for a company. And then later on, I formed an organization and ran the whole business, where I had 150 people doing this all over the world. I mean, we would do things for places like Las Vegas casinos.
Yeah, I saw about that.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, they would hire us to do essentially like Ocean's 11 type engagements against some of the casinos. We try to do social engineering, see how far we can get into the depths of the casinos. You saw some really interesting things in the back underground, 2-3 floors below the casino, and trying to get access to things like that. So I ran a whole team. We did security research. We would find flaws in Android phones and Apple devices and report those vulnerabilities, disclose those vulnerabilities to the businesses, and then we'd also, companies would hire us to test their applications, Mobile was becoming big back then, and so we test mobile applications, find flaws with that. So it was all about testing and finding flaws, and then helping those organizations improve their security.
And you also infiltrating hacker groups as a hacker yourself, but obviously not allowed. Is it known as a white hat hacker?
Yeah, so I would say, the term is called white hat.
Yeah.
And so I don't really use that. I just usually use hacker, right?
Yeah.
I would say I'm a hacker, and it's more of,
Okay,
I
cool.
use it in the positive connotation. Obviously,
Yeah.
media will say, oh, it's hackers broke into this bank. And I'm like, well, I'm a hacker. I didn't, it's not my friends didn't break into that. I always would equate that to be criminals. Criminals broke into the bank. They just
Right.
happen to be using hacking skills.
Interesting.
Right, yeah.
Okay. But there are, the underground groups of hackers
Yeah.
that talk and work together. I mean, do you have to infiltrate those to learn about new vulnerabilities that may exist?
No, not necessarily. So there is a hacking community, and so I would say I'm part of the hacking community on the planet. I run a hacker conference in Chicago.
Yeah, ThoughtCon?
ThoughtCon,
Yeah.
yeah. So we've been doing that for about 10 years. It grew from myself and a bunch of friends. We hung out in a bar and invited about 100 people, and they came and we got on stage at a bar and gave talks, to now, this past year was our 10th year, we had about 1,700 people.
Wow.
About 50 speakers from all over the world that came in and participated. So it's all sharing of knowledge. This isn't,
Yeah.
the look and feel of ThoughtCon is like underground hacker conference, but there's chief security officers from lots of companies, there's security consultants that come, and then you have all different types that come.
I really like the website for ThoughtCon as well.
Yeah.
It's like simple, but kind of like, it still feels like that secretive word. It almost feels like the interface where you would be hacking from. Is there something behind the design on that?
Yeah, I designed it.
Yeah.
And so early on, I just wanted to make ThoughtCon more of a throwback to the older underground hacking conferences, sort of like the BBS days that I grew up in, where I would dial into a BBS like Temple of Pong in Chicago, and I would dial in and I would go to the message boards and I would go to the download section and I would learn. I would hit, on my Commodore 64 or my early PC, I would go and I would hit 1 and I would get into the message boards and I would read what's going on and I would scroll around. There was no mouse, there was no graphical interface, it was all text. And
It's
that
funny,
was
whenever I think of hacking, I always think back to the film War Games.
Yeah.
Do you remember that
Yeah,
film?
like Matthew Broderick, right,
Yeah.
like dialing in. So, the dial-up nature of that, that was state of the art when I was that age,
Yeah.
right? When I don't remember which year that came out, probably 83, 84 or something like that is when that movie came out. That was my life when I was 12 years old back then.
Is it blurred? Is the line between, say, ethical hacking or hacking as you were talking about and criminal hacking, is it blurred? And because I can imagine there are people who can hack things for criminal purposes and benefits, but the same people can also hack for bounties, right?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily if it's blurred. I think maybe in the minds of people who aren't part of the community, it's blurred. I would say there's a strong ethical difference. And so, growing up in this world, I've had to make a lot of choices in life, right? Everybody makes choices. Could I have used my skills and my techniques, even early days when I was getting hired to break into companies? Did I have access to some highly sensitive information when I hacked in? Did I have access to lots of money, right? I had access to bank accounts and different, trading floors of Chicago exchanges and things like that. Could I have done some serious damage or made some quick money for myself by doing that? Certainly I could have.
And then you could have spent 20 years in jail.
Well, I could have, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an ethical choice. I had that power. I had that access. It's almost like the Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Right. With great power comes great responsibility. When you have those skills, you have a choice. You could choose to do good things with it to improve the world around you from a security point of view, or you can choose to do bad things. And I think, unfortunately, I'm in a unique position, and lots of people in the United States are in a unique position, or people who are in places like the UK are in a unique position, where they have opportunities to do legitimate work in this industry, in the security industry. Now, there are places in the world where maybe jobs might be very scarce. Now, I think the bug bounty programs out there maybe are helping attract the people who, in other situations where they didn't have an outlet to use those skills, they have to use the passion, the things that they have to breaking things, they may make poor ethical decisions, and it may be easier to recruit by the criminal groups. And now you have these global bug bounty programs where if you talk to folks like at HackerOne or BugCrowd who run these programs for lots of companies, the vast majority of the researchers that participate in those programs are from outside the United States. Some of them are from third world countries where they have access to internet and they have a computer. Maybe it's not a great computer, but it's good enough to hack web applications, manually, and they're now making a living off of that ethically, right? They're getting paid.
Well, the internet's a great leveler
Yeah.
in those terms.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Is there any need for people to do the job that you do if there aren't criminal hackers?
Well, I guess if you wiped all the bad people off the planet, if everybody had good intentions, well, no. I mean, you wouldn't even have to lock the doors on your house. I mean, if you go to small towns, right? You go to small town America, people don't lock their cars. They don't lock their houses because there's no crime. I mean, no one breaks into their houses and steals all their stuff. So I would say if we lived in a perfect utopian society where everybody trusted everybody and everybody could be trusted, well, then, security wouldn't be as big of a need. But unfortunately, we don't live in that world.
No. So it's a classic good v evil battle.
Yeah.
And you're trying to stay one step ahead?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not just security, it's also privacy, right? Privacy comes into a play there. If you want to keep your information private, you don't want people spying on you, well, then there's a trade-off, right? So you have to protect that. Maybe you pull the blinds on your home. You don't keep your windows wide open and walk around naked in your living room with everybody to be able to see you. So you close the blinds, right? So there's that. I mean, I think just sort of the nature of humans, right?
And is the world of hacking these days, I've always thought of it as a guy in his bedroom, a smart guy, he's got access to his computer, he's on there hacking, but is it become more professionalized these days? Are there hacking groups? Are there almost professional organizations? Or I say professional organization, you'll probably just say criminal gang.
No, I would say they're professional organizations. So one piece that when we talked about my leading the ethical hacking efforts, right? So penetration testing at various companies, I also at the same time was doing investigations into cybercrime attacks, right? Intrusions into various companies. Brand name companies all over the world were my clients. And those companies were being targeted by real organized crime groups. Like, these were not just a couple of kids in their basement thinking that they're going to break into a bank, right? These were not just there's one guy or one girl who has hacking skills that wakes up and says, I'm going to break into this global retailer, right, and steal a bunch of credit cards. It was not that. It's not that at all. I think maybe occasionally you get bits and pieces of that, but there is a real criminal enterprise that is funded 100% by hacking into companies, stealing credit cards, stealing PII, stealing bank account information, stealing cryptocurrency, right? Stealing things that they can monetize. I did a great deal of work with global law enforcement in my career. I was invited to speak at Interpol on cybercrime and organized crime groups. And so there's a lot going on there that most people don't know about, that when you hear about a company that gets hacked into, the media will say, hackers broke into company X and stole whatever. Right? In your mind, you think of, it's a bunch of hackers in their basement. They're all just sort of working together. It's not really the case. Right? I mean, there are hierarchies in these crime groups where there are people who run it, very professional people who have nice homes, drive nice cars, go on fancy vacations, and will then have employees. They have people who their job is to find vulnerabilities in various businesses. And when they find those vulnerabilities, they pass it off to the next people, who their job is to then organize and plan to exploit that business.
Do you know what? It just sounds like whenever you watch a film where there's, say, a bank robbery, it's the guy who provides the plan. He creates the blueprints. This is how you're going to break in, and he sells that onto the team who are going to commit the robbery.
Yeah.
It sounds the same.
Oh, it's very similar. I mean, these are the targeted attacks that you hear about. Those are not just done off the cuff.
Right.
Especially when they're utilizing things like 0 days, which maybe you've heard of.
I've heard of. You should probably expand in case I'm
wrong. So, think of the reality is that any software that has ever been written, that ever will be written, has potential vulnerabilities, right? Humans write that software. Humans make mistakes. Humans don't see all the various attack vectors, all of the threats that are possible, all the ways that their software can be misused. And so someone can sit down with any piece of software and say, I'm going to try to find a vulnerability in this. and they try and they try and they try, and they use different techniques. There's fuzzing. They can do reverse engineering on that software. They may be able to find a flaw. When they find that flaw, if they're the only person that has ever discovered that flaw, and the manufacturer of that software, the developer of that software, doesn't know about the flaw, that's essentially a 0 day. What that means is it's brand new, no one knows about it. It can be utilized to exploit and attack others who are using that software, and they would have no defense against it. And so that's why things like 0 days are so powerful, where, for to give you a good example, a long while back, this is back when I was running a research lab, we did some testing of SSL, secure sockets layer, SSL vulnerabilities against popular mobile applications. And in the process of doing that, I collaborated with a researcher named Paul Kerr. In the process of doing that, we actually discovered a vulnerability in iOS that would allow us to intercept any traffic that was flowing from that device that was encrypted over SSL. And so essentially, we had a man-in-the-middle attack that would be undetectable by the victim and undetectable by the other end. So if you had a banking application on your phone and you went to go log into your bank, and we happened to be on the network between you and your bank, we'd be able to see everything in clear. We'd be able to decrypt that.
Wow.
And see everything. We found that vulnerability. That was, at the time, it was a 0 day vulnerability. We were the only people on the planet that knew about this. Could we have sold that to a criminal group for a lot of money? We probably could have sold it for maybe $500,000.
Wow.
And it was very, very powerful vulnerability. Instead, being the good white hat hackers and researchers we are, we called up Apple and said, there's this flaw. It's pretty nasty that we found. Here's proof of concept code. You guys should probably validate this and make sure that we're not crazy. We actually thought we were like, well, this can't be really happening. Like, this is pretty serious. And we reported it to them, and within 10 days, they fixed the vulnerability. Globally, they put out a patch. It was like version 4.3.15. I don't remember the exact number. It was an early version of iOS, but they actually pushed out a patch that everybody on the planet with an iPhone or an iOS device got a patch, said critical vulnerability, update your device. But that's an example of a 0 day. It's something that I know as a criminal or a researcher that no one else knows that I can use against your device, and it would just literally walk past any, basically breaks that software, breaks that barrier that's in place, and I get access to something, and you would have no indication that it's happening.
How did they thank you?
This is pre-bug bounty programs, and so they thanked us by sending us an email that said thank you, basically. Yeah.
What are do most companies like Apple have now a kind of responsible disclosure protocol?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies out there will engage with security researchers in a more open dialogue. Now, occasionally those things go sideways. Sometimes things will happen where a researcher will report a vulnerability, the company doesn't know what to do with it, their legal team gets involved, things get very messy, the researcher gets fed up because they've been waiting so long to get a response, and then they just drop it on the internet. You've seen that happen, where someone's like, I'm done dealing with this vendor. Now, that wouldn't happen. That used to happen a lot. I mean, there was this world in the hacking community. Was a mailing list called Full Disclosure, where people would just drop 0 day all the time, vulnerabilities on there, or they would drop advisories. Sometimes when vendors would have no idea how to deal with them, and so that world has evolved a little bit to where most brand name companies, so your Apples, your Googles, your Microsofts even, right? Like your brand name, software vendors out there. If you report a software vulnerability in their products, they have teams of people who know how to handle that. Right. We have that at Kraken. Right? We have a bug bounty program where people can email us and let us know about a flaw that they find, and if we see that and we validate that, then we turn around and we thank them, and then we also pay them. We also will send them some Bitcoin for doing so. So lots of companies have that nowadays, which keeps that dialogue open and fluid, where in the old days, I'm not talking like 1950s, we're talking 2000s, in the older 90s even, where that dance was not well thought out in most companies. Now, not to say it's solved. There's places like medical device manufacturers that have had all sorts of issues where researchers have reported something, and then they turn around and sued the researchers for finding a flaw in their product, right? There's all sorts of things that can happen. And there was also, like, legally in the United States, there was laws like the DCMA where Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which prosecutors can claim that you were violating in trying to break into different products. And so that even if the vendor themselves didn't care, they can then still prosecute. But now there's a carve out. So there's actually a carve out in laws that allow for security research, which is a good thing.
Well, it's interesting you should say that. So I was with Neha Narula from MIT in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and actually I released the show today, and she was talking about when they found a critical vulnerability. I think it was in Bitcoin Cash.
Okay.
And I think it was Corey Fields who found it. I might have the example incorrect, but she was saying they took legal advice before they disclosed the bug because they were fearful of being potentially sued.
Yeah.
And also the disclosure process itself is kind of terrifying because who do you disclose it to?
Right.
If you disclose it to the wrong person, especially in cryptocurrencies, they might exploit it and they might end up stealing some of the cryptocurrency. So it was a really unusual. I wasn't prepared for that. It hadn't crossed my mind that you could be sued for finding a bug.
Yeah, I mean, vulnerability disclosures themselves as a researcher, and this is one of the things, like, I did a lot of security research and I ran a security research lab, and I got out of that business mainly because, there was a lot of liability that would fall on my shoulders for doing that. Now, I support it. We have folks even within the company that do that. But personally, like previously, I sort of got out of that business for a little bit of time because it got really shaky back like 5-6 years ago, where people were getting sued left and right for finding vulnerabilities. And so today it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
But that being said, the open source community, so the open source world where you have open source projects, there's not a clear owner, right? There's maybe a maintainers, but there's not like a business that owns it. Disclosing a critical vulnerability to an open source project has always been very difficult. How do you notify the maintainers? Do you email them? Do you just go on the mailing list and drop it?
Yeah.
Right? Do you submit a pull request to the GitHub repository and now everybody sees the vulnerability and now it's out there, and what do you do? And so that can become very, very problematic. And even in the past, when I was doing security research or I was running those teams, we would submit things to open source communities. Mm-hmm. And we found in some cases, they would not fix the vulnerability in the right way. Some people would want to debate amongst themselves whether it's something that needed to be fixed. They would then downplay it or it wouldn't get fixed. We often saw things where they thought they fixed a vulnerability, but they fixed it in the wrong place. And so there was this whole back and forth. And as a researcher, you're not getting paid to do this work, right? So as a security researcher, there's open source community is not going to turn around and give you money for finding that vulnerability. And so at some point, you're like, okay, well, you guys are on your own.
Yeah.
Like we gave you all the information you need. You guys want to fight amongst yourselves or fall over yourselves in fixing this problem. Eventually we have to step away. And so that can happen in that case. So, but I would say like submitting a vulnerability to a open source cryptocurrency project, right, could be dicey for a researcher.
Very dicey.
Yeah.
What about the process if you have found a vulnerability, but you want to sell it? Are there marketplaces? Is it dark web marketplaces where this exists? And is it now, ironically, because of our conversation, I guess you would pay in Bitcoin or something?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you would get paid. I mean, it used to be. Yeah, I mean, I think cryptocurrency is probably how most likely you would get paid. Yeah, there are people, and there are companies out there that are in what you would call the vulnerability brokering business, where they will buy vulnerabilities and then pay you, and then possibly do something bad with them. There are governments who would like to have those, right? So there are governments who having a 0 day in your arsenal, or having lots of 0 days in your arsenal, is really important to them. If they want to then go and infiltrate another country, if they want to go infiltrate a maybe dissident group, right? They have a 0 day on 0 day for Android phones, and this dissident group are Android users, right? You now can get into their devices and steal stuff. Get their chat logs, get their contacts, get their GPS coordinates. Uh-huh. So there are things that you can do with vulnerabilities, and so there are people out there that buy those. And so that's where like the arms race really takes place between the bug bounty programs and the vulnerability brokers, because there are people out there that legitimately will buy those 0 days. Like I mentioned, when we found that SSL 0 day in Apple, We literally could have turned around and sold that to a vulnerability broker. They would have paid a lot of money for that. But if Apple would have paid us for it, I think Apple today probably would pay maybe $100,000, $200,000 for that similar type of vulnerability.
Wow.
Where that's where the arms race goes, right? So
Yeah.
Microsoft has to pay lots of money, Google pays lots of money, Apple pays lots of money, and all the other vendors out there. If you go to the bug bounty programs, the prices keep going up because they would rather the researchers sell it to them so they can fix their stuff rather than selling it to a vulnerability broker who's then going to sell it maybe to an organized crime group who's then going to use that to infiltrate their customers.
And I guess the state level hacking is an interesting one because we will hear about like an army of North Korean hackers and we think of them almost like criminals. But I imagine every Western government has a team of hackers that
I think every government has an offensive cyber team.
Yeah.
Right. They have an offensive cyber team where their job is to, if you hear from the, even the U.S. government, they will say that it's like the fifth domain is cyber, right? So it's like you have land. Well, let me make sure I have them all right. So you have land, sea, air. I don't know. There's more of those, right? So there's more domains. I think it's the fifth domain or the fourth domain. I don't know what they would call it, but it's there is a domain that is now considered cyber in the U.S. Department of Defense, right? So they actually think of that as a method of defense. They also think of it as a method of offense. Mm-hmm. They know that they're going to get attacked by other governments or other armies using cybersecurity. Right, that's a method of attack. Just like you can fly over a country and drop bombs, you also can hack into that country and disable their electrical systems, their power grids. So that's a method. And so every first world country has to have those teams.
And I guess, cryptocurrencies are in some ways perfect for the criminal hacker because when they find a vulnerability, they potentially have the ability to move significant amounts of value instantaneously, and it's irreversible.
Yeah, and I've often thought about that from like even just cryptocurrency in general, from like a paradigm shift, right? Paradigm shift from like most people, most consumers or most people think of, if I get compromised and someone hacks into my bank account, my fiat bank account, mm-hmm. in most places I have insurance or I have the ability to recover that. If someone steals my credit card, I don't care, right? Just call the credit card company and say, someone stole my credit card. They racked up a bunch of bills at restaurants and bars, reverse it, and they reverse it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the world around, cryptocurrency, I think there's huge advantages of it, right? So, massive advantages of cryptocurrency versus, traditional finance. But that being said, I think the risk, people just need to understand that. Right. If you don't protect your keys, right. If someone has your keys, you don't own your money anymore. You don't own your crypto, and so that's a big thing that people need to understand is that they need to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. They need to put an extra layer of security. They need to be extra aware in this world to where they could be sort of happy-go-lucky with their finances in the non-crypto world because there was people looking out for them in that regard.
How much exposure had you had to cryptocurrencies prior to joining Kraken?
A bit. Yeah, a bit. I had dabbled in mining a bit.
Okay.
I've played around with it quite a bit. Back, like trying to say like what year this would have been, 2012, it would have been 2012 when I was running that research team, mm-hmm. right? We also had a lot of GPU power at our disposal. And so we dabbled a bit in it. We had GPU power that wasn't used. The intent was not mining cryptocurrency. Uh-huh. The intent was if we got a hold of a password file that was encrypted, we would be able to crack that password file in an engagement. So say we were going and we were hacking into a business and we got a hold of their domain controller and we got access to their password file. We would then take that back and load it into our password cracking rig. Mm-hmm. We called it a password cracking rig, and it would churn away and it would crack that. We'd identify the passwords. That same technology can be used for mining Bitcoin.
Right.
And so we dabbled a little bit in that.
Uh-huh.
We played around a little bit of that.
And then, but how did the connection for Kraken come about? It sounds like. I quoted you where you said your 20-year career was a dress rehearsal for your role at Kraken, but it feels like a very genuine statement.
Yeah, so all of the work that I had done, previously, all of the work I had done investigating compromised environments, all the work I had done running security programs. And so right prior to Kraken, I ran a security program for an industrial AI company. Their threat model was more of the intellectual property theft. Right? They weren't stealing. We didn't have currency. We didn't have client funds, but they were going after intellectual property. And so that was interesting as well. I think the jump from that organization to Kraken for me was the fact that there was even heightened threats, that I have to, as a challenge, right, for me to build a program and operate a program and defend against all the bad people that want to steal stuff from us.
Well, I mean, exchange hacks are still a huge problem. I mean, Binance have been hacked, was it twice recently?
Yeah.
And I assume they have a great team there. I kind of imagine your job is terrifying in some ways because you've got people all over the world constantly trying to find vulnerabilities and hack in and get to this honeypot of a cryptocurrency which they can move and kind of liquidate it probably a lot easier than maybe when you steal credit cards and trying to use those to steal money or from bank accounts. Cryptocurrencies themselves, there's so much you can do to kind of hide your tracks. I can imagine that job's terrifying because I kind of think of it like a castle and you've got people trying to dig underneath, smash through the walls, come over the top. They're trying to come through the people who live in the castle. Like every possible way people can attack you, they're trying to attack you on a daily basis. When you're monitoring this, can you see a constant attack on the systems?
So that's one topic I won't go into too deep on, like specifically how we defend against things. But I guess sort of rewinding, I can talk to that. So the one thing that I experienced at Kraken, right? So when I joined Kraken, my earliest impressions of the company is that this is by far the most security-minded organization that I've ever experienced. By far. It's not where you have a couple of people who are security people who their job is to fend against everything, to think about everything at all times, and they have this task that's impossible for them. I mean, that's what most companies, the state at most companies. You have people running off doing business, doing their daily jobs, and then you have a security team that just worries about everything to do with security and defends against all the attacks, and everybody else is just like dropping vulnerabilities and being compromised left and right. That's not what I experience at Kraken, from top to bottom, from Jesse, everything through the entire organization, to the people who work with our customers every single day. They're very security minded. They are very aware of the threats that we have, and it really, really helps me as the chief security officer there that people bring anything to our attention that they are concerned about, that people, if they are targeted themselves, there are attempts to get targeted themselves, just like everybody else. People send emails to try to phish our employees, right? Everybody sees that. People see it on their personal emails, right? But people are very, very aware of the threats. And then even beyond that, the people who in our company who are developing our products are very security aware. And so it's not as if there's this world where it's security preaching about security and everybody's like, yeah, whatever, I'm going to go do whatever I want. That's not the world that we live in here.
Through the DNA of the business.
Yeah, it's through the DNA of the entire company. People are very aware. People are very concerned. It is not a place where we're going to put out, say, quote, a new release of a product. And everybody's like, hey, this is great. There's this brand new release. And the security team finds some, say, vulnerabilities in that, right, through the testing of the new product. And we say, hey, there's vulnerabilities here. We shouldn't put out the release. There isn't someone like at a business level that would say, no, we'll fix that later. Let's put it out because we're going to make money off of this. We would hold that product or that release indefinitely until those security vulnerabilities are 100% resolved if we found those during the process. And so that's very different. There are lots of companies out there that would be like, let's ship it, while you guys are fixing these vulnerabilities over here, and then we'll patch it later. We'll put out a point release later that fixes that vulnerability.
It's hard to question Kraken's track record with regards to security. I mean, I do it with my ads. You've obviously heard my ads. I'm always going on about security. I'm always saying if you're going to trust an exchange, there's no exchange you can trust more than Kraken with terms of security. And like you said, I mean, my experience with Jesse and getting to know him and meet him and interview him is that he's created a culture through the business of one of those things is security. And I don't think I've managed to... I'm not just saying this because they're a sponsor, but I don't think there's an exchange out there who is anywhere near Kraken in terms of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking, we set the standard there.
Yeah.
Right? We're constantly, and there's independent reviews of, various exchanges. I think it's CER recently did a review, and we were ranked number one, based on their criteria. I think even beyond that, looking to push beyond, just what other people think, right? By independent groups, think we constantly want to push the envelope internally to what we think is. It sets the bar from a security standpoint. I see ourselves, when we think of like competitively in security, I see ourselves as competing against ourselves, right? Like, what's secure today is not going to be secure, in 3 months. It's not going to be secure. Sometimes it's not secure tomorrow, right? If there's a new vulnerability that's identified in something, some product, some technology, and just like anybody else, we utilize technology just like anybody else does, right? There could be a vulnerability identified, and we have to get in front of that. We have to mitigate that, and we have to have layered approaches so that there's never, a single issue that all of a sudden, like, the sky is falling, right? Like, that can't happen. We can't put ourselves in that position. So it always has to be, let's improve our program, improve our controls, make things more efficient for the business. So it's not like giant walls that are getting put up and then the business can't operate, right? There's this balance there, but we always put security first, and it's my job to keep trying to raise that bar, not only for ourselves internally, but also for our customers. Mm-hmm. So our customers' experience around security, I work hand in hand with our product teams to build a roadmap to put new security features into our products, and people will see that. Those things are coming. We have some really interesting things that are flowing, that are in early stages, where it'll give more control for our customers, more visibility for our customers into their account to see things in a way and secure their accounts in new ways.
I still would be an absolute nervous wreck doing your job though. Every day worrying about it. Next up, I talked to Nick more about hacking and security, but before that, I need to tell you a bit about my amazing sponsors. Okay, first up, Dropbit, the best mobile Bitcoin wallet. Have you checked them out? Have you downloaded it? Are you using it? Come on, if you are, give me a message. I might even send you some Bitcoin. I do that occasionally. Not to all of you, but I might do it to some of you if you've got the Dropbit wallet. And why should you care about it? Well, it's the easiest mobile wallet I've found. I've had a few in the past, you know what? And I've not really used them that much. Some are okay. Usually the UX puts me off, but this one, the UX crushes it, and there's so many cool options. They told me at the start, they're like, we're like a Venmo for Bitcoin. And whilst I don't have Venmo, I've seen people using it. When I've been out in the States, I've been for dinner, seen people sending and receiving. Actually, people turn around to me and go, Pete, Venmo me, and I haven't got it. But I can Bitcoin them now. I can Bitcoin them with Dropbit. You can text Bitcoin to people, you can tweet Bitcoin to people, and you can do all the standard things with pasting addresses. It's so cool, so definitely go and check it out. It is available on the iPhone and Android. Just head over to dropbit.app, which is dropbit.app. That is dropbit.app, which is dropbit.app. And lastly this week, and never least ever with any of my sponsors, because you're all amazing, but we do have accounting. So are you taking your tax seriously? Do you care about your crypto taxes? Because if you are going to want to check out Cointing. They are the best crypto tax tool in the market. They're also the easiest to use and the best priced. So that should be enough. That should be enough for you to go and check them out. If you are thinking of comparing the market, I did it for you. Everyone else is rubbish. Accounting is definitely the best. It is so easy to use. They've got the great UX. They've also not just got a tax calculator, but they've got a portfolio manager which tells you which coins to trade to reduce your tax burden. They connect to all major wallets and all major exchanges, and you only pay at the point that you want to export your tax report. If you're taking your tax seriously, there is no reason for you not to be checking out Cointing. So go and check it out. It's accointing.com, which is ACCOINTING.com. That is accointing.com, which is accointing.com. I find the Kraken Security Labs project very interesting.
Yeah.
Was that spearheaded by you? Is that
Yeah, it
company
was.
one? Yeah,
it was like I mentioned where I
that's
used
really
to,
cool.
Yeah, where I used to do security
Yeah.
research, and then I stopped for a while because things got really dicey, and then things have stabled out quite a bit where vendors are starting to interact in a more mature way with researchers. And so, the idea there is that we consume technology as a company. We know that our clients consume technology as individuals in the cryptocurrency industry. So we are building, within my team, I have lots of people globally that do focus on security. And some of those skill sets are the white hat hacker skill sets, that are security researcher skill sets that I have at my disposal within my team. And so why not, as part of a thing that we give back to the community, when we find issues, in things, why not, operate as a security research lab in that regard? And so then talk to vendors and say, hey, we found this issue, you should fix this. And when they fix it, go out and communicate to our customers. And so we're at the early stages of that. We've been doing quite a bit of research, looking at various products, looking at various technology, and you'll see some things in the near future coming out from us.
And what's the general feedback been about this?
Feedback from the community or feedback?
Yeah, but so I can imagine. So what I've seen recently, for example, is some of the hardware wallet manufacturers finding faults in each other's products.
Yeah.
And I actually don't like the way some of the behavior has been a little bit, it almost feels a little bit gloaty, a little bit kind of like, oh, we found a flaw in our competitor's products. And it almost like it's some kind of battle line.
Yeah.
It's, in some ways, if you're finding faults in other people's products, sometimes people may find it hard to accept.
Right. Yeah, that's the piece. Like, would we go and target, another exchange that has no bug bounty program and just find a flaw and then publish it? No. Like, that's not the intent.
But that's not a Kraken style of behavior.
Yeah, that's not an intent. I think the intent is there are lots of products like hardware wallets or even software wallets, right, or mobile wallets. There's lots of products out there that have popped into the scene that actually a lot of these are startups. They may only have 2 employees, right? They don't have the security expertise that we have, and we have customers, clients that may be using those products.
Right.
And so the intent there is for us to deploy our expertise against some of this ecosystem to find vulnerabilities, to report that to those vendors. And the idea is not to like name and shame. Like that's not the intent. The intent is to, we wouldn't go on Twitter and say, hey, we found this vulnerability in this product. Oh, by the way, vendor, you should probably fix it. Like, they're not going to learn about that on Twitter, right? They're not going to learn about it in a blog post. We would be communicating with them, helping to educate them. We would provide proof of concept code. We may even provide them some guidance on how to fix the vulnerability. And certainly, because the intent is for them to improve it. The intent is not to discredit other vendors. And so I think that's where our intent is a little different than, if you're a wallet vendor and you see yourself competing against all these wallet vendors and your intent is, well, I'm going to find vulnerabilities in my competitors to basically discredit their technology. I think that I'm not sure that maybe that works in some worlds, but I don't think that's the best for this community.
I agree. I'm with you. It sounds to me though you're looking at the one step from Kraken for your customers. The products they're using that may be interfacing with Kraken, or they're moving their cryptocurrency from Kraken to other places. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like the ecosystem. Obviously, we know that we're not the one-stop shop, right? People can go, they can transfer fiat into our our exchange. They can buy lots of cryptocurrency with it, but we don't want people storing loads of cryptocurrency in our exchange. Like that's not something we recommend. We recommend they get a hardware wallet.
Well, Jesse said that recently, didn't he?
Yeah. You don't, we're not a wallet. People have to store cryptocurrency because they want to trade it, right? Active traders need to have funds there, right, to be able to trade that. But if you have lots of, Bitcoin in Kraken and you don't have a hardware wallet and you keep it there and that's where you do your daily business from, or that's where you buy things from, like someone says, send me Bitcoin, you send it from us. That's probably not the best use, right? You should own your keys. You should have them, have them in your safekeeping. so that they're in your possession, they're in your control.
Have you spent much time looking at the Bitcoin protocol yourself? And also, I'm going to load this with another question. And actually, I think I wrote this in my description for my show this week, but in the 10 years of the protocol, we've still never had a single counterfeit Bitcoin created. I'm almost certain about that, which is kind of amazing, right?
Yeah.
And very few catastrophic bugs which haven't been fixed almost immediately. Have you taken much of a look at the history of Bitcoin and the protocol? And what do you find? Do you find that really interesting?
Yeah, I think it's because it was designed the way it was designed from day one. Right, it was meant to be that type of protocol, right? Where that's why it was designed, right? It was, if it was another type of system where you're trying to bolt on security after, like, it's this open environment where you can counterfeit, right? Where you can double spend, where you can do all these things, where that was like inherent to like the way it started, right?
But it's not going to stop people trying to.
Of course, it's not going to stop. And you have to imagine the amount of value that is stored, right, is pretty massive. That if there was that vulnerability, that people would have found it, and so I would say, not to say it's never going to happen, but you can imagine there's probably a lot of brain power beyond me, right? But much more brain power beyond what I have in my arsenal to apply to this, and it's probably being done, or I know it's being done. That it's pretty brilliant that it hasn't happened yet.
Well, I almost imagine some of these people are like, this is bullshit. We've tried for fucking years now. We can't find anything. Let's give up. There must be easier things. 7
years of trying, right? You still haven't done anything, right?
It's actually probably much easier and more fruitful to try and hack wallets and.
Oh, of course. I mean,
accounts.
if you're a criminal group, or if you're someone who if that's your intent, why go the hard path?
Well, the game theory isn't there anyway, because if you hack Bitcoin and you create counterfeit Bitcoins, meant you find a way, I imagine the entire value of the Bitcoin will crash.
Evaporates, right? I mean, that's the problem, right? So why even attempt that, right? You want to maintain that value. If I go and I target you, right? I'm a criminal and I know that who you are, and I go after you, personally, and I get access to your wallets. I steal all your Bitcoin. The Bitcoin value does not go down, right? And your value, your account value, right, in your possession, right, that wallet value goes down to zero, and mine increases.
Yeah.
But the price,
there's no new supply.
Yeah, there's no new supply of that, and the news of that. If you go on Twitter and say, my Bitcoin wallet was compromised and they stole X number of Bitcoin, the price isn't going to change because of that. It's a complete blip in the radar of that.
Do you follow any of the discussions and arguments and debates around the design of the protocol, comparing, say, Bitcoin to other cryptocurrencies? Some want faster block time, some want bigger blocks. A lot of the criticism of Bitcoin is that it's slow, it's expensive. People want a faster cryptocurrency. But it seems to me that in terms of security, its slowness and its expensiveness actually is part of the value.
Yeah, I don't get involved in those debates, right, or those discussions.
No.
That seems like a thing that I could probably, take up a lot of my time. I focus on, protecting our employees, protecting our exchange, protecting our clients, right? But yeah, getting into the intricacies of that and sort of, saying like this protocol is better than this one or this one, I stay away from that.
Yeah. Are you bought into the cryptocurrency world, or are you bought into the Bitcoin world? Do you see a future for this? Do you like it? Do you like what
certainly.
It brings? So you're fully in.
Yeah. No, I see it as a revolution, right? This is like a revolution that's sort of at the early stages. Do I think that in short term, right? Like, are we going to see next week everybody in the world, every government, everybody in the world just say, hey, it's great. We fully support Bitcoin. We fully support cryptocurrency. Let's have a party. I think it's a little bit of a long road.
Well, we had Trump tweeting yesterday.
Right.
He
doesn't
like Bitcoin.
Yeah. So that's not going to. But how I sort of see that is, and have looked at things similar in my career where, any type of significant revolutionary change, whether it's in technology or finance or wherever, doesn't happen overnight. Right. It doesn't happen immediately. The world doesn't get changed. You don't wake up one morning and all of a sudden everything's completely different. That typically doesn't happen. And typically, for some people that aren't in tune with this, there will be some people that will wake up one day, a decade from now and say, oh, wow, there's this Bitcoin thing, right? There will be some people on the planet that will happen to.
Yeah.
But for lots of people, it's not brand new today. It's been going on for a while. And it's going to take, some time for this thing to gain momentum. And it is, right? You see new places to spend. You see new merchants coming online that allow you to spend. Like, you see new expansion around the world. Some governments are accepting it, right? Maybe their own value of their fiat is just like inflation's like off the charts, and people within that country see this as a way to store value that doesn't go crazy from an inflation standpoint. So I think this is an early stage of more of a revolutionary sort of tale that's playing out, and I'm very excited about that.
Well, it must be exciting for you as well, because security it's almost like the fundamental key pillar stone of cryptocurrencies.
Right.
It's the security of the protocol, the security of users, the security of transfers. So it's perfect for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, it's what I've been working on my whole life, basically, right? So, that's where, like, the security of people's personal worlds, the security of the businesses that transact cryptocurrency, the security of exchanges and the other players in this space, right, are paramount to the success of this, right? That's extremely important. That's where it's, part of that revolution. There is that security mindset paradigm shift that I think eventually we'll get there. I think that, this is, I've been spending a lot of time just sort of thinking about like where we sit in sort of the timeline, right, of things. We sit in a place where there are people who are all in, right? There are people who, love cryptocurrency, see the potential, see the future, see what it will be like a decade from now, what it will be like 50 years from now, right? They see that. There are people who don't see that at all. Like, there are people who are maybe, either of any generation, or even sometimes the older generation, who just don't comprehend it. And that's okay, right? That's okay. I mean, there are people who, I remember early days of the internet, that just could not get their head around what the internet was.
Yeah. My
grandparents were like that. They grew up with when radios were first. They saw the first televisions, and that was like, magic to them, when that came out. The internet was just sort of like, they just could not understand it, right? It was very, very, foreign to them. And so I think we're in a place in time where there are people who like to be able to pull out their wallet and, see paper money and change on the table, and don't understand what cryptocurrency really is and sort of the utility of that. And they may never get there. But I think with any sort of long plane revolution, now this sometimes maybe sound a little bit morbid, but if you think the revolution is going to happen today and you have all these people you're up against, right, from, eventually people die off, or they come out of power, right, in decision-making places. And new people with new ideas, and people who are bought into these types of things, who grew up with this, the children who are born today are going to grow up in a world where Bitcoin exists, right? And Bitcoin's something, and cryptocurrency is something. It did not exist in their minds. And so when they're 25, 30 years old, it's everyday life for them. And eventually they will become that's where those people will be in decision-making positions. And when there's, debates in legal circles around things, well, this is not a foreign concept to them. It's not like they can wrap their head around it, because it's always been there for them.
Well, yeah, it's like the internet with my children.
Yeah.
I've got a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old. They don't realize there was a world where we didn't have a supercomputer in our pocket, we didn't have the internet, we had encyclopedias, and that if you were going to meet somebody, you had to arrive on time, because there's no way of contacting them.
Right.
Now, these days, you can be 10 minutes late, half an hour.
On my way. Right?
Yeah, on my way. Just go and grab a coffee. That didn't happen. You had to be on time, and they don't understand that world. My daughter has never lived in a world where there wasn't Bitcoin. It's been, she hasn't used it. She's aware of it now because of me, but Bitcoin existed before her. So you're right. As she gets older, it's going to become more natural, I think, for them. And I think the way we use Bitcoin will probably change. And we have a president tweeting about it.
Right.
I mean, what a time. Even if he says he doesn't like it, he says he doesn't like it because he can't control it. It's what I really think he's saying there. I think what a time to be alive.
Yeah, well, you have a leader of a country who is mentioning something that a handful of years ago didn't even exist, right? And there's people who didn't ask for permission. Right, like I think the other piece that excites me about cryptocurrency is that this community doesn't ask for permission, right? They just did things.
Yeah.
And that's super exciting to me, right? Like, I hate when I hear, I mean, this happens in just sort of technology world, or just people in my circles where, I run into security researchers or people that, say, hey, I have this idea to do something. And I'm like, well, why don't you do it? And they're like, well, I have to ask this person, or I have to do this, I have to jump through all these hoops. And I'm like, no, just do it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so I think the excitement about the community, it's just pushing ahead. Now, there's going to be people who are going to be like, no, we don't like it. Leaders of the of a large powerful country, right, is going to say we don't like it, right? They're going to say it publicly, and everybody in the world is going to see that is the case. But who cares? Just keep moving, keep pushing.
Well, I tell you what I really liked as well is that David Marcus was hauled in front of the Senate for Libra, right? He had to go to Washington. I think it was this week actually. There's no one you could bring in front of the Senate for Bitcoin and tell them, well, you need to halt development. You can't do it.
Right.
And that, to me, is one of the most magical things about it. That's what I really like about it.
Yeah, it's similar to the old, and this is like, if you draw parallels, early internet days, there were lawmakers in the U.S. that said we need to, put firewalls up and, control the internet. And like, they just didn't understand how the internet worked. Yeah. And so the whole nature of like, drawing a box around the United States and saying no one could access things inside our internet, right? Like they didn't understand that the internet it's owned by humanity, right? It's not owned by any one government. And so that's similar to cryptocurrency.
So when you look now where we are, you've kind of got a good position where we are, and I take it from you think we're still very, very early.
Yeah.
And you start to imagine, the next year, 5 years, 10 years. Are you picturing how things will change? Do you think security within cryptocurrency will change a lot? Do you think it'll be a lot easier to use our private keys and secure? Or do you think it's always going to be something that's going to be very difficult and we're always going to have to be ultra aware of our own personal security? How do you think about that?
So I think in general, people need to be more aware about their personal security. I think that is a big problem that we're up against, where people today aren't aware. I think in the future, I think that'll still have a role, right? I think being careless with private keys, right? For example, and it's always going to be a problem, right? If I get access to your private keys, right? I have your coin, right? So I think that'll always exist in this world. But that being said, I think there are, again, with sort of the progression of people like your daughter who grew up in a world with cryptocurrency, right? With Bitcoin, that always knows that exists, always knows that the internet exists. Hopefully, she'll grow up in a world where you need to be more security minded than folks who are my age or older, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that problem may solve itself in some respects, where a big part of the security problem is actually the human element rather than the technology element. And so, you talk to any criminal, you talk to any ethical hacker, where I did this for, a living for a number of years, the least path of resistance in any target has always been the human. Right? It was far easier to social engineer, to get past a human control, than it is to find a vulnerability in technology X or find a vulnerability in hardware wallet Y, right? It's far easier to do that. That'll always exist. I think it's just, how aware is the general population? If the whole general population has a on a scale of 1 to 10 is still at a 0.5, I think 10 years from now there will still be struggles. But I think in general people's awareness is increasing over time. It's far more aware than it was 10 years ago. It's far more aware than it was 20 years ago. Even when you talk about awareness, it's also businesses and the people they have employed there. People who build their networks, people who build their applications, people who build their tools or install their tools are more security aware today. You don't see as much of, well, I installed this critical system, but I didn't change the passwords, right? Like that's something I saw as an ethical hacker almost every time in a company. You get onto their network and all the cameras have the default password still. And so you could spy on all the employees and zoom in and look at the screens and all sorts of that. It was a great tool for an ethical hacker. But hopefully we're getting to a place where security is top of mind in most organizations. And there's nice tools and frameworks and checklists that you can go through that says, when you deploy X, make sure you do these things. Now, there will always be people who do bad things, right? You can't really fix you can't fix those kind of problems, mistakes and things like that. But I think we're getting to a place where knowledge, awareness is increasing. And it has to, right? It has to increase. But I think on the same front, I think there's a lot of innovation happening to make things more secure, to make things easier for not employees, but for clients and for users of cryptocurrency to make better choices. Now, it shouldn't be that you need to be able to, compile your own, deploy your own node and compile your own, Linux kernel and harden it and do all these things in order to be a participant in the cryptocurrency community. That's
too hard.
That's too hard. That's ridiculous to even assume, right? It has to get to a place where someone who has an iPhone or has a device or just as a consumer can be able to do this. And we're getting there, right? There's lots of new products that are coming out. I've seen, some interesting things. There's lots of new apps and things that are out there. Now, are they secure under the covers, right? Behind the scenes? Maybe not, but are they trying to solve the usability problem for cryptocurrency? Certainly. I think eventually you'll have those two things catch up, right? There'll be some apps out there that are compromised, right, that have flaws, and a bunch of people will lose, will get hurt, but people will learn from that. And that's just how the nature of every industry. IT learned from that. Look at a decade ago with Microsoft and all the vulnerabilities that they had, and the worms and everything that were flying around. They learned, and when the Windows operating system is far more secure than it was a decade ago.
I've been starting to think on personal security a bit more. I don't really carry much Bitcoin with me. I have a few sats on my mobile wallet, and I wouldn't carry much with me because of the role I do. But at the same time, I'm conscious that I'm traveling. I tweet out, I'm going to be in LA. Who wants to hang out? And I am kind of potentially putting a target on my back because somebody might think I have some Bitcoin. I might think, let's go and wait for Pete at the airport and let's throw him in a car and let's see if he's got some Bitcoin. And I know there's other people in the industry who definitely are very protective of their location data and where they are, and some, including appearance. How much do you think about that? Obviously it's relevant for Kraken. I don't expect you to talk about that, but is that a genuine threat?
It is, yeah. I think personally, I think about that quite a bit, more so than I did 2 years ago, right? Prior to joining Kraken, historically, I was a very public person. I am still public today, right? It's not a secret that I work at Kraken and I'm the chief security officer. But I was the type of person that would tweet a lot where I'm at. Hey, I'm at this event, right? Hey, I am on vacation here. I'm staying at this hotel. I post things on Instagram, in real time, right? That was just sort of the nature of being a public person. I didn't have the types of targets or types of threats that I do today, and so I personally don't do those things anymore. My Twitter account is not as active as it used to be. My Instagram account is not as active as it used to be. And so I do think about that. Now, something I took to heart when I joined Kraken was to develop some really very, very detailed guidance for our employees in the personal security realm. And so essentially myself and members of my team, we essentially wrote a guidebook for our employees on how to secure their personal lives and their personal world. And so we have plans to share some of that publicly because we think the cryptocurrency community will benefit from that. But it goes down a path of really, really thinking about your world in a different way. Really thinking about if someone was to target you, what information are you providing them to help them along the way? And then once they have that information, what controls do you have in place to be able to detect or prevent against those types of attacks? And some of it comes down to the whole thing of discretion, right? The statement of that was used in World War II in the United States, right? When my grandparents, my grandfather was fighting in World War II, was loose lips sink ships. He was a member of the Navy, and he told me that when I was younger. And that people need to be mindful of what they talk about publicly, right? And what they talk about in social media circles, or even talk about when they're at events, right? It's funny, there's some cringeworthy things that for me when I've seen some folks on sort of the, I guess you would say cryptocurrency Twitter, where I see people going to events. Right, I'll see people going to Consensus or something like that, and they're tweeting about it, and they're taking selfies, and they're boarding this private
This guy
plane.
here.
Yeah, they're
I'm not in a private plane.
right. They're boarding a private plane. They rented this fancy car. They're at this fancy restaurant, and they're like tweeting and posting photos about this, and it's like sort of bragging about, well, I have lots of Bitcoin, right? And I have all, and like that to me is just silly, right?
Asking for trouble.
Yeah, just asking for trouble. I mean, you got to imagine, and actually, I don't think imagine. I think most people don't realize that there is this criminal element out there. There are these organized crime groups. They have to find their targets somehow. And what better way to find their targets than just troll Twitter, right? Look at Twitter, or troll Instagram. Search for the hashtag Bitcoin on Instagram. Search for the hashtag Bitcoin on Twitter. And you'll find people that have full names. They'll have where they live. They'll have links to their, everything. And they're out there just bragging about, what they're doing. And unfortunately, that those people are probably on the short list of targets for those groups. And then it goes beyond that, right? And then they know who you are, right? They find out information about you. They know what your phone number is, their mobile phone number. And then they go and they SIM swap you, which we've heard about.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is one thing that I think most people aren't aware of, is that the SIM swapping is not just criminals going to like a store with some fake ID. Now that happens, right? Someone can go and they find all information, they go and they make a fake ID, they get some fake information, and they look similar to you, or maybe they're a male, right? Peter, right? My name's Peter. Here's my information.
If you took your beard a little shorter,
but the person at the store doesn't know what you look like, right? They just know that it's this guy who's around our this age, and it looks like him. Okay, I lost my phone. It fell in the river, right? I need a new SIM card, and where's your what other? I don't have anything. Whatever, right? And you social engineer them, and they're like, oh yeah, here's a new SIM card. And you pop it in a phone, and then you use that to go do things, right? Well, that's one way. But it is also, fairly known that there are people who have infiltrated the carriers. And so it's not as if it's somebody having to go target the stores and things like that. There are people inside carriers that criminal groups will say, I want you to SIM swap Peter. Here's half a Bitcoin. Yeah, sure, I'll do it.
There you go.
They know that you are someone who has maybe money in maybe you have a lot of crypto and Bitcoin in various exchanges. The way it works, right, is I then go and they SIM swap you, maybe in the middle of the night when I know you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Right. I look at your social media stuff. I go, oh, yep, every day between this time, he's silent.
There's no alerts.
No alerts and whatever. He's silent. He must be sleeping. I'm going to go and I'm going to SIM swap you. I now have your phone number. I now control your phone number. I'm now going to go and, because I know what your email addresses are.
Yep.
I'm now going to try to go password reset all of your email addresses, get the SMS code to my phone, to my phone that has Peter's SIM card in it. I then go and I log into your email accounts. I then look through your sent mail, all the different folders that you have, your inbox, your deleted stuff. Oh yeah, look, he has all this information coming from all these different exchanges. Right. I now go to the exchange and say, hey, I forgot my password. All the password resets go back to your email. I now log into all your various exchange accounts, right? Now I'm in all your exchange accounts, and I go and I add withdrawal addresses. The emails for those withdrawal addresses come to your email account. I now accept all of those. I now empty all of your accounts. And it happens that easy. That's how it happens. And so there's things that people need to put in place, right? Like putting extra security in place at their carrier, right? Putting multi-factor authentication that is not SMS based. There's a very specific reason why Kraken, as an exchange, we do not support SMS based two-factor authentication.
I don't know why some companies still do.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous to me.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I found out there are various other companies out there, and this is what's interesting. I went through several months ago. I went through a whole, just world cleanup. Right? Everybody should go. You should catalog all the various accounts that you have. What are the methods of login? Some places only use SMS two-factor authentication. Right? They don't use authenticator apps, or they don't use security keys, and so you're sort of stuck. Like, is it better to not? You have to sort of weigh that own risk yourself. And so I went through a method of removing some SMS from various applications because they now supported things like security keys. I'm like, great, I'm going to use the security key. And I removed it. And then I tested it myself. I said, I physically removed my phone number from that account. And I went to the password reset and I said, I need to reset my password. And it said, enter your phone number. I entered my phone number and it still worked. somewhere in the depths of their database, my phone number still existed. And so you need to test it yourself as well. So if you have critical accounts that you remove things from and you convert to higher levels of authentication, go and try to hack yourself.
There's an old really good guide. I think it might have been done by Not So Fast or Jameson Lopp. Someone did a really good guide for things like your backup phone number on your Gmail and various things like that. I think if you guys were to produce a kind of like an open sourced guide to better personal security, people would love that because people will follow it.
Yeah, we have plans. I think in the next couple of weeks, right? We have we took some of the content from the guide that we wrote internally and flipped it more towards our clients. So there's going to be some of that coming out. But a lot of it has to do with just basic security hygiene is what I would call it. Have strong passwords, use password managers, have non-SMS two-factor authentication everywhere you can. Harden your personal email account. Work to try to mitigate the risk of like a SIM swap or something like that from taking apart your entire life. And then be very mindful of what you share online and what things you glean and what Google yourself. I mean, that's the best way, right? Google yourself, see what's out there about you, see what personal information's out there, and then especially for U.S.-based folks, it's sort of a treasure trove of information. There's so many open databases that get published now. For folks who are in Europe, they have GDPR, and so it's probably a little bit a little harder to find information about you. But thanks to GDPR in the U.S., there are some databases out there that just implemented recently, right in the last year, really easy opt-out methods. So if you Google yourself and you find your home address and your phone number on a website, you can go and say opt out. And within a couple of minutes, sometimes your information is gone,
right?
Which is nice.
5
years ago, that was impossible. It was like, nothing I can do.
Do you think there's a need for an industry-wide body to work together to create a set of standards? Is that even practical or possible?
Yeah, so I've been involved quite a bit around that, not for cryptocurrency. So back in the early 2000s, I was doing lots of work for the credit card industry, advising security advice for credit card industry. I saw a big issue with specifically payment application systems, so point of sale systems like at restaurants and hotels and places like that. By doing investigations, I found I drafted a standard around that. It's actually a global standard now. It's called the Payment Application Data Security Standard.
Nice.
That every point of sale system on the planet, the manufacturer of that has to go and adhere to. Now, I thought that was great, a while ago. When I was writing it, it was going to change the trajectory of the payment industry in my mind, right? It was going to improve security drastically globally, and I thought it was a great thing. What I learned is that when some of these standards get developed, the biggest impact that they have on the security of that ecosystem that they're trying to impart those requirements on is the data that's published. After that, it gets diminished over time. Mainly because a body now would probably own it, and those bodies typically then work very slow in keeping up with the threats. And then you get to a place where there's maybe outdated or irrelevant things that are requirements, and now organizations have to waste time and money trying to satisfy those requirements instead of defending against real threats. And so I think there's a place for this. I think a best practice is maybe
information sharing.
Information sharing, definitely.
Yeah.
I have been having conversations with folks, security folks at other exchanges.
Okay.
Right? We talk. Right. We're all security people, so there is a bit of that happening. Information sharing happening. Just like in the traditional financial world, there's in the United States there's something called the FS-ISAC, which is all the major banks, the security people at all the major banks, all the financial firms get together, and there's a forum where they share threat intelligence. I think that's awesome. I think cryptocurrency industry probably needs to do more of that, because a threat, it's yes, another exchange getting hacked into maybe in some remote way benefits us, right? Maybe some people move to us, but I don't think that's great for the industry at all.
Yeah.
I think keeping the criminals at bay, I think is great for the industry, because someone hacking into exchange X and steals millions of dollars, that is now millions of dollars of resources that is now at the disposal of that criminal group that didn't previously have that money.
Of course, yeah.
And so if we
it's not just for boats and.
No. Now they can go and they can buy 0 days, right?
Yeah.
They can build it like, I had a whole team of, white hat hackers, right, that worked for me that were doing this, doing vulnerability research. if I had $5 million or $10 million in cash and I was a criminal, I may be able to go and recruit 30 people that all they do is try to find 0 days in various things. And so, keeping that value away from the criminal groups by knowledge sharing, by maybe setting best practices and sharing best practices, in the ecosystem, and I think is just going to accelerate the ability for us to succeed as an industry.
Wow. So this has been as fascinating as I expected. I also think at some point I'll probably just want to have a pint with you and talk about stuff where we don't record, because there's probably lots of interesting stories and anecdotes from the past that would be amazing. But this has been fascinating. It'd be good to know kind of what's coming up for you that you can talk about. And I think I want to come to ThoughtCon next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me what's coming up.
So personally for me, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be at, this is publicly known as well, so I'm not revealing anything. I'll be at the DEF CON hacking conference in Las Vegas. It's the world's largest. There'll be 25,000 people there.
What date's that?
It is August 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, I think.
Cool.
I think that's it. Yeah, so it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm actually a goon there, which is a volunteer. I help run the network at DEF CON. And so we spend about 3-4 days prior to DEF CON wiring up and building a brand new network, wireless network, wired network that spans multiple Las Vegas hotels. And we then secure that so that the attendees can communicate in a secure way.
But do the attendees also then try and hack it?
Oh, of course they do. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, of course they do. So we have a DEF CON secured network, which uses encryption and security and authentication for you to get access to that network. Where there's also a DEF CON open network, which is the Wild West, where if you can throw a computer on there and see how long it takes to get compromised. You throw like an unpatched old Windows computer or something on there. I mean, you can just see it get taken over because it's 25,000 hackers. It's, I think, coined as the most hostile network in the world.
I was going to say, it just feels like an event where everyone's just going to be trying to screw each other over and for kind of like not so much for any kind of gain, more than kind of like technical banter. Do you know what I mean? Just kind of like, if you could hack your mates, where you hack the primary system that you guys have created, you can go around and go, yay.
People try, people try, and they will try interesting things. But it's a lot of fun. So I've been going there. I've been going to DEF CON since DEF CON 8. This year's 27. I've been a speaker there a number of years, and so that's a lot of fun. I also in September, I think it's at the end of September, there is the Wyoming Cryptocurrency Stampede.
Yeah, I'm going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
That's up with Caitlin Long.
Yeah. So I'm going to be there as well.
Cool.
I think I'm speaking. I think I'm going to be speaking on security. I don't know the specifics yet, but I've been asked to do that.
Because Kraken are sponsoring the WYO Hackathon.
We are. Yeah.
So I'm going to be there.
Oh, awesome. So we'll be able to get a pint there.
Yeah, we'll get one or two.
Yeah.
Well, listen, look, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate this. Also, thank you, Alex, for helping facilitate this. You can say hello. Yeah, thank you. It was as fascinating as I expected. Lastly, just tell people how to find out more about ThoughtCon, how they can keep an eye on you and maybe stay in touch with you. Who do you want to hear from? Yeah, so if they want to stay in touch with me, probably the best place would be Twitter. Mm-hmm. So my Twitter handle is a little bit different. It's not my name. Mm-hmm. It's the letter C. It's the number 7, and then it's the word 5. So it's C75. Is my Twitter handle. It's an old hacker handle that I use, and so that's the best place. You can reply at me, and if you want to have a conversation, you want to ask questions, totally cool. I like to engage with people. If you want to find more about ThoughtCon, you just go to thoughtcon.org, thoughtcon.org. Check it out. It is a very plain and simple website, but you can find out more about that. Our next event is going to be next May. So May 2020. But we do, if anybody listening wants to submit a paper, I would love to have cryptocurrency security talks at that event. Our call for papers will open on October 1st, and that's also when tickets go on sale for the event, is on October 1st. Yeah. All right. Well, look, thanks for coming on. This has been great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, wow. How was that? And what did you make of that? It was really a pleasure to listen to that one through again. I really enjoyed it, actually, apart from listening to my own voice, because nobody likes to listen to their own voice again. But can you actually imagine the kind of pressure Nick is under every day with this? And yet he remains so chilled. I think he's almost certainly the best man for the job. And yeah, I was really glad to go out there and record this and do this in person. Love talking to Nick. And I know that Kraken are one of my sponsors, but even without that, this is an interview I definitely would have done. And for me, it's very clear that they are leading the way in terms of exchange security. And with Kraken Security Labs, they're also helping push the industry forward, which is, it's really, really cool. To be honest, I found some of the things Nick said about personal security a bit concerning. It was a bit of a reminder to myself that maybe I shouldn't be sharing or broadcasting out all my travels, or maybe I should add a delay. Look, if you are thinking of coming and kidnapping me, I'm not that wealthy. I'm not really worth it. So, yeah, leave me alone. But, yeah, no, it's making me think maybe I should be reconsidering this. Maybe I'll be telling you where I've been after I've been there rather than where I'm going to. Yeah, I need to have a think about that. I don't want to become a target myself, but I do want to go for a pint with Nick. I do want to hang out with him again. There's a whole bunch more stuff I'd love to ask him. I know his OPSEC's pretty good, but I reckon it'd be good to hear some of those old stories that he's got. Anyway, listen, big thanks to Nick for doing this. Big thanks to Kraken for being sponsors. Hopefully I'm going to get a beer with him at the WIO Hackathon, and I hope you enjoyed it. And as ever, if you've got any questions, you can feedback to me. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Also, if you want to support the show, I haven't got time to go through everything now. Just head over to my website. It's whatbitcoindid.com. Click on the support section. It will tell you everything you can do. Yeah, and as I said, I'm going to be heading out to New York in a couple of days and back home, and then I'm going to be taking a holiday. Definitely need a holiday, but I've got some amazing interviews coming up, so keep an eye out for that.